Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview Sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.
Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast, Financial Services Edition. This is Seth Greene here today with the good fortune to interview Brad Wales of Transition to RIA.com. Brad, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Seth, happy to be here.
All right, now let's go back in time a little bit because I know you didn't start out as the how to launch your RIA expert. So how'd you get started in the business?
Yeah, almost 20 years in the industry. Started right out of college in the financial services industry. Moved into a bunch of different roles. Actually started compliance originally, and then realized that's its own little special place. Some people love it and some people don't. We'll just say I was on the latter part of that. So eventually evolved into more fun things, if you will. And eventually got in the custodial space of the marketplace. So that's where I started working with RIAs and then did that for about 8 of those almost 20 years. And then eventually for a couple different reasons launched my own firm here to help advisors find that path themselves of going into an RIA.
All right, now that was the really, really short version, and I am sure the longer version should be in a book if it isn't already. So let's unpack that just a little bit. So when you got in the business in the beginning, why did you get it? What happened? Like I find that usually as advisors, there's some incident, there's some life event that causes us to say, ooh, I want to go do that for a living. So what inspired you in the first place to go become to get into the financial services industry?
Yeah, so my education, both my undergrad and then I stayed and got my MBA right afterwards. So was in business. So I certainly was attracted to the financial services market, and in a kind of interesting situation. I'm in Florida, and before I moved to Florida, I had lived in Alaska, and I told myself, hey, I don't want to go back to anywhere where it's cold. And the good news is there's not exactly a whole lot of corporate headquarters for financial services in Alaska. So it wasn't like there was a draw for me anyways, but had an opportunity, right out of school with a good company here staying in Florida, and went into that role. And then it gave me a whole lot of opportunities to grow, professionally and kind of realize exactly which part of this industry I wanted to operate in. So no, specific childhood story of trying to right a wrong or anything like that with a financial thing. I've just always been fascinated by finances. Again, that's where I pursued. It was my education. And truth be told, I think this is with a lot of careers. It wasn't like I had it figured out on day one by any means exactly, where I'd be 20 years later. Not at all. Like I said, I started with compliance, which was in part to get my foot in the industry, but I think that's what you have to do, and then explore from there to see where your passions are.
Absolutely. Okay, so it's funny because most people, I'll put that in italics, in our industry start as a registered rep, right? We start in what is essentially a sales role. You've got to go get the clients so you can manage the money and do the financial planning you thought you were going to do when you start in the industry. You started on the dark side of compliance. So I think this can be obvious probably for most people, most RIAs listening, most advisors, but it'd be curious to hear from someone who actually worked in compliance. What did you like and what didn't you like?
Yeah, fair question. And I ended up getting, my 7 and a bunch of other licenses. So at least I could relate to kind of that process. Obviously that's still not on the front lines there with being an advisor, but compliance, I tell people, it's actually a great place to start a career because for better or worse, you're forced to learn all the rules and learn how they're applied and things like that. And just, it is what it is, that there's it's almost like two camps in compliance. There's the folks that, they want to be like hey, I'm gonna get this person. I'm gonna find out that they broke the rule, or I'm gonna make a name for myself with the management team here because I discovered they forgot to check a box on something like that. And then there's the folks that, realize, and I'd like to put myself in this camp, that I always said, hey, the financial advisors are the one that signed my paycheck.
Yeah.
And so I could be, you compliance, you have a job to do, but if you're so difficult and so almost rude, if you will, in how you deal with folks, at some point they're just going to leave, and then the realization, okay, without the financial advisors, there is no me, and I think a lot of people don't see it that way, and they kind of run things how they want, and I think you lose the big picture, and that was a big. That turned me off from that role. And certainly not everyone can. There's some wonderful people that have made wonderful careers out of it that see it the right way. But unfortunately, there are some folks that see it as a chance to kind of go after, get a win on the board for catching this financial advisor. And obviously there's some bad financial advisors out there, but absolutely the majority are wonderful people trying their best, and some mistake was made, and let's not beat them up over it.
Well, I'm sure that sounds like a breath of fresh air. It's funny that we had one of our compliance officers leave for another firm like 2 weeks ago, and there was an email going out saying, "Hey, I'm leaving the company. I'm going to another one. I'll be here, and this will be my last day. And if you need any, blah blah blah." And I actually called and said, "Hey, I want to wish you the best of luck. Thanks for always helping and keeping me on the straight and narrow." And he was like, "I don't understand." I'm like. He's like, "You don't have anything pending approval." I said, "No, I don't." He's like, "Why?" "I'm calling to say goodbye and thank you." And he's like, "Oh my God, I have no rep has called me." And he's like, "There are people in my department who sit one cubicle away who didn't say thank you or goodbye."
Yeah.
Said, "Well, maybe that's why you always approve my stuff."
Yeah. Well, good. No, good for you. And it's a two-way street. So I'm glad you appreciate the contribution you can make to making things, better for them to do their job. So,
because I'm sure that relationship can be a lot of the times contentious, and if you're fighting them all the time, they're not going to want to help you.
Yep.
Because they're just trying to do their jobs. All right, let's move on to what we're here to talk about today. I just had to ask. So, talk about what is transition to RIA.com. What do you help advisors do?
Absolutely. So I'm a firm believer. I'm horribly biased by my beliefs. So I'll state that up front, that the RIA model is the absolute, not just future of where the industry's going. I mean, that wave is here now and has been moving for some time. And so for advisors that want to make that move into an RIA model, the challenge oftentimes, and for years I've been helping advisors with this. The challenge, of course, is if you've only worked at maybe the larger wirehouse type brokerage firms or regional firms, or even the independent broker dealer firms, if that's all you've ever known, you might be a fantastic financial advisor, way better at being a financial advisor than I ever could. However, just because you've been doing that for 20 years doesn't necessarily mean you're an expert at how a different affiliation model works and all the mechanics of it and why you may or may not consider doing that. And so that's what I really wanted to build out there, was someone that could help with that. And specifically, and that's the last thing I did at the big financial firm I was with, is in their custodial channel. And I was out there explaining this RA model and teaching it to advisors. And then of course, my ultimate goal in that role was to have advisors choose that firm as the custodian. And the challenge I had with that is, at the end of the day, I was only able to offer one landing path, one solution for advisors. And I joke, I wasn't particularly good at it, because while the solution I had to sell was great for a number of advisors, there's other advisors, for different reasons, it was not. The competition was better. And I wanted to be, agnostic, independent, where I could say, hey, let me walk you down whatever the best path is for you, not just the one that I have to sell. And so that's a big part of the motivator of why I jumped to do my own firm with, like I said, with transition to RIA.
Now, why are you, I'll play devil's advocate for a minute here, just to educate. Sure. Why are you such a big proponent of the RIA model?
Yeah, and I think I'll even turn it back on you. You know, all of your messaging that you put out there, and you know what you can do for advisors and help them grow their practice. The two big appeals of the RIA model generally are the economics. It is what it is. The math generally always comes out better. You can make more bottom line income in it, but and that's great. But also it's the flexibility of your own practice, and so. You know, Seth, we'll use you. I know your backstory, A.G. Edwards, and how you eventually made a move. And I think that's a great example because A.G. Edwards, to this day, I think has a wonderful reputation out there. And people speak glowingly, oh, they don't make firms like that anymore. But I think the challenge
they got
is
bought out twice, so they don't exist.
That?
But yes.
It wasn't that A.G. Edwards was bad. It was, I call it a structural problem. As long as you were kind of lumped in with thousands of other advisors, your ability to market yourself in certain ways and the flexibility of how you want to do things, it just is what it is. You're kind of handcuffed, and that's still the case today. Obviously, A.G. Edwards has evolved, now it's part of Wells, but with any of these large firms, that's the case. So that I think is where the big attraction is. Again, the economics and then the flexibility. And so everything you're helping people, and I know you help advisors. Hey, how do I grow from 400 million to $1 billion? A lot of those tools and techniques are just more difficult, if not impossible, to do at a lot of the large employee type firms.
Yes, I agree 100%. You are absolutely right. What are some of the biggest challenges you're finding that reps are having when they want to transition to becoming an RIA?
I'd say almost the biggest one is inertia. It takes work to figure all of this out. It takes work to go through the process. Part of why I created my firm is to try to make that kind of, especially the first step, a lot easier of hey, what's the easiest way to explore how this works? And the challenge is, if you call up, and there's a lot of great people in the industry, but if you call up someone that works at any particular custodian or particular firm you might join in an independent capacity, they certainly can help you as well. But again, at the end of the day, it is what it is. There's a particular solution that they're tasked with selling. And so you kind of have to realize how much, where's their advice going to steer you one way or the other. And so what I wanted to create, and I think that's one of the big challenges is hey, a way for advisors to literally just say, okay, I think I got some buddies that have done it. I have a general idea how it works. Teach me what I need to know. How would it look for my specific firm? And so really trying to make that as easy as possible for the advisor. And then of course, that's just the first step. Then if you want to actually do it, okay, there's a whole process to how that works. But I think there was a void out there in the marketplace of just having an independent voice that can represent all possible options.
Then you're not biased, obviously. You're not saying, oh, well, if you do this, you have to go to Schwab or you have to custody at Fidelity. How does your process work? I know it starts with a discovery call because you have to learn about the advisor just like they've got to learn about you. But how do you help them through that process of deciding, yes, you should be an RIA or no, you shouldn't? How do you structure it? How do you do the legal stuff? And then how do you run the business once you've done it?
Yeah, so there's I do call it a discovery call. It's kind of the initial kickoff, and that's really just to begin that dialogue. Hey, is this something you might want to consider further? Is it something I can help you with? And I will admit there's a bunch of advisors that ultimately it's not a good fit for, because there is I always say, hey, look, I'm a straight shooter. There's a lot of great things about starting your own RIA. But a lot of responsibility comes with it as well. And I think it's only fair to lay all that out there. So part of that is just level setting. Here's how it works. Here's the good, here's the responsibility. And then to the degree, again, hey, it's worthwhile digging further into that. I have a whole process to help people understand all of the different vendors involved in it, because ultimately that's what you are. As an RIA, you're working with vendors. So you're going to need marketing people, you're going to need technology people, you're going to need a custodian, and then that can be quite overwhelming of, what are all these choices out there? How are they different? Why should I choose one over the other? And again, that's a big part of my value proposition is digging into each of those. And then ultimately, if you want to take those next steps, making introductions to the specific people that can help you with that. And that's a long process. This is not a one phone call and we're done and everything's good to go. I mean, it is an education process. and then quite an extensive kind of transition process as well for folks that want to go down that path.
What are you finding what are some of like the biggest mistakes they're making when going through this process without somebody like you?
Yeah, and so it's self-serving for me to say this, but again, the challenge is if your intent is, okay, let me start learning about this model, and you call a particular solution provider, whether that's a custodian or an existing RIA, because that's an option to plug into an existing RIA, or there's middle office providers as they call them. The challenge with that, again, is if that's your first conversation, and look, I used to be one of those people. There's nothing wrong, and there's very knowledgeable people, but they at the end of the day, there's a goal in mind and a solution in mind. And like I said, I wasn't particularly good at that because I sometimes would work with advisors and the best advice would be, no, you actually should go over here. And that's tough to do if your first point of contact is someone that only has one solution. Now, to be clear, I am biased in the sense that what I'm trying to help people is go into the RIA model, whether that's starting your own or whether that's joining an existing RIA or any of those iterations. But I do tell people, I mean, there are profiles of people where it is just not a good fit, and ultimately they're going to be better either staying put. Sometimes it's better, you know what, maybe you shouldn't make a change at all, or maybe it's a different model, and I can try to, you know, refer them elsewhere. But that's I'm very specific. My niche is the RIA model. I don't try to be everything to everyone, and I try to own that space.
That makes a lot of sense. Your passion's obvious. What do you like best about what you do?
I think it's fun. I think the fun part of it is just those conversations. I mean, you know, there's times where folks will reach out to me, and quite frankly, the way that the economics have it all work, it's not necessarily going to be a big potential win for me, but just any advisor that is thinking about starting their own business, that's exciting. That's a fun conversation to have. And so, yeah, there's, you know, steps involved and different things we talk about that aren't exactly the most exciting parts. Okay, here's how you do your compliance as your own RIA. That's not an exciting topic, but just the idea alone of people starting their own business, and you can see that in people. It's quite enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet. So with all the success you've achieved, what's your biggest challenge now?
I think just like any business is having that audience. Not to pat myself in the back, but I mean, I routinely hear from people that, you know, when they're done talking to me and they say this has been extraordinarily helpful. I even lost deals back when I was representing one solution, and people would come back to me and say, hey, sorry, you know, Brad, your solution is the, you know, what you had to offer is great, but this other solution is even better. So I unfortunately have to go with them, but just know that you were by far the most helpful in that process. And so, you know, that's quite rewarding to hear. And I think I can provide a lot of value to advisors. It's right, getting that chance to have that conversation with them. But that's any business, right? That's advisors themselves getting that conversation with their clients going. You can have a wonderful service, a wonderful product. You have to have your chance to communicate it.
Absolutely. For advisors who are thinking about making that transition, where is the best place for them to go to learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything, starting point, my website, transition2ria.com, have all kinds of videos, educational videos, podcasts, white papers. Big believer, you know, if you go to my website does not say, here's my name, here's my phone number, call me. I want to prove to you first that I can be of value to you, actually start giving you educational content. So I think the videos are up to 35 plus, and like I said, all kinds of resources. So if you look at the website, you like what you see, would love to chat with people. If you don't like what you see, it kind of settles itself out, but I'm confident, and it's working. People reach out to me as a result. So
awesome. And then one more question. Do you work with folks after they've become RIAs, or does it end at the transition?
Good question. So it's certainly not on the proverbial wedding day of where they launch. I don't leave them at the altar and walk away without looking back. But I'm not a practice management guru that helps you from growing from, as you do, help people of growing from one size to the next. So usually I'll stay engaged with people, you know, a little degree after the transition, because there are a lot of steps involved in that. And then on a going forward basis, again, I try to stay in my lane. I absolutely help people learn about how to do this, and then go through the steps, and then leave it to other experts on those other areas of success for their practice.
Awesome. What else do you want to share that I didn't think to ask you?
I gave you a little thing that I learned, and I would encourage people to consider, no matter what industry you're in, if you're thinking about starting your own business, and so certainly it applies with financial advisors that have maybe been at a particular firm for a long time, especially kind of maybe a captive firm, is something I experienced, and I joke, I call it my Shawshank Redemption experience. So for those of you that know that movie,
Yes.
I love that movie. I don't know why. That drives my wife crazy. Anytime it comes on, I'll watch every little.
It's a great movie.
I don't think I've ever seen it start to finish, but I've seen like every little piece piled together thousands of times over. But anyways, in that movie, right, there's a big kind of theme that's talks about being institutionalized, where the prisoners, when they get out, they can't take a mind shift. And so it was an interesting thing for me to be in a corporate environment, like I said, nearly 20 years, my whole career, and then to go out and start my own firm. It did take a couple weeks. Because doing things like this, there's no way I could have done something like this as an employee at a corporate firm. We have corporate norms, we have particular spokespeople, and so it took a couple of weeks for that realization to finally set in with me that, oh wow, I can do these other things. I can be more flexible in how I market myself, and I think most financial advisors experience that as well when they've been under that heavy compliance regimen, or oh, you can't do this, or supervision, and not that there's not still rules and regulations in the RIA space, but making that transition, it's quite a refreshing feeling of the flexibility you have. But I would tell you, it is a little transition, and you kind of feel institutionalized for a little bit. So
I do remember. Thankfully, it was 13 years ago, and the pain faded, just like pregnancy, I would imagine. All right, this has been Seth Greene for the Sharkpreneur Financial Services Edition with Brad Wales of Transition to RIA.com. Brad, thanks again so much for joining us.
Yeah, Seth, thanks for having me on.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Do you need money to fund your idea, product, or service? Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but need capital to get it done? Kevin Harrington has heard more than 50,000 pitches and knows how to help you make the perfect pitch to get the funding for your entrepreneurial dream. He's distilled the process down in his perfect pitch cheat sheet, and it's yours for free. Just text PITCH to him right now at 727-888-2100. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 right now and claim your free perfect pitch cheat sheet. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 to start funding your dream today.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.